I always tell anyone considering participating in clinical trials for the cash to rethink it if they have any other options. The pay just doesn't make it worth the toll it takes, and the side effects can be brutal. Most of the time, the trials only cause mild discomfort like headaches or nausea, but sometimes, it goes far beyond that. I've been in this field for a few years, and I've seen some crazy things, but nothing compared to what happened last week. To be fair, I had warned them. In every board meeting, I'd bring up the importance of not cutting corners with the lab rat testing and development. The higher-ups always shrugged it off, saying things like, "Our scientists know what they're doing," or "I've been here 3 years, and the other supervisors have been around for over a decade without any issues." It got under my skin, but I knew deep down that something like this was bound to happen. I didn't think it would be this bad, though. It all started last Monday. We were kicking off the clinical trials for a new heart disease medication called Albasil. They were marketing it as a breakthrough, claiming it showed noticeable results within a few days. That's pretty fast for any drug, and I was honestly curious to see if it would hold up to the promise. As far as I knew, it had only gone through 1 round of animal testing before this, and this was the first human trial. The results from the rat trials were kept from us supervisors, so I didn't think too much about it. The group of test subjects was pretty diverse, ranging from kids to elderly patients, with heart disease at varying stages. But they were all there for the same reason, to help advance the treatment of the disease. I could relate to that. It was part of the reason I chose to become a clinical trial supervisor. This trial was planned to last a week. We provided the patients with rooms and meals, and the other 2 supervisors handled the day shifts, while I got stuck with the overnight shift. I wasn't thrilled about it, but it was my turn, and I couldn't complain since everyone else had worked nights before me. The medication was supposed to show results on the 3rd day, so we'd be closely monitoring the patients throughout the week. It sounds simple enough, but I didn't factor in the patient's behavior. In every clinical trial, the patients sign a contract stating they can't leave until the trial is over, with some exceptions for medical emergencies. Technically, it's not legal, but the higher-ups make sure we have enough security to enforce it. People don't like feeling trapped, though, and it's not uncommon for patients to get aggressive when told they can't leave. It's the hardest part of the job, and with how game-changing this drug was supposed to be, I expected even worse behavior if things went south. The first night went by smoothly. Most of the patients were polite, and the few who needed help weren't rude about it. No signs of side effects, no changes in their vitals, everything seemed normal. The second day was the same, but then something strange happened around 4 a.m. My call button went off, directing me to one of the rooms on the 2nd floor. The patient there was an older woman, in her 60s, with severe heart disease. She was sweet as could be, and I immediately felt a sense of dread, worried something had gone wrong. I rushed upstairs. When I entered her room, everything seemed normal. The bedside lamp was on, and she was sitting up in bed, just looking at me. I walked over, knelt beside her, and asked, "Miss Margaret, is everything okay?" Her response was the last thing I expected. "Where are my fingers?" I was completely caught off guard. I looked at her hands, everything seemed fine, all her fingers were there. I'd never dealt with anything like this before, but I knew the first thing to do was reassure her. So I said, "Miss Margaret, your fingers are right here. I can't see them. Can you make them come back?" I gently lifted her hand and showed her each finger, counting them one by one. Her eyes widened, and then she smiled. "Oh. There they are. Thank you, dear." I was shaken, but I didn't have an immediate answer. Was she hallucinating? That's a possibility, though I'd never seen someone hallucinate to the point of thinking they'd lost body parts. Could it be some undiagnosed condition? That was another possibility. I decided to talk to the other supervisors the next day and make sure it was added to the report. As long as she wasn't in danger, there wasn't much I could do. But things took a turn the very next day. I got 16 calls that night. We had 30 patients, so more than half of them were experiencing negative reactions to the drug. What scared me wasn't the number of calls, it was that every single one of them was identical. I'd walk into the room, and everything would seem fine, except the patient would be freaking out. They all said the same thing: something was missing. Toes, fingers, tongues, they were convinced something had disappeared. Of course, nothing was physically missing, but it seemed like they couldn't feel those parts anymore. After the first few calls, I reached out to the emergency doctor on duty, who was staying in a separate wing of the building. He wasn't thrilled to be woken up, but I told him to get down here now. We examined the patients together and decided that we needed to hold an emergency meeting the next day. The doctor suggested I take the next night off to rest after everything I'd been through. He promised he'd advocate for ending the trial immediately. I shouldn't have agreed. I later got a call telling me that the trials would continue because they found no evidence of any immediate danger to the patients. That was the moment I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I told Jim, the head of the trials, exactly how I felt. I can't keep doing this, Jim. These people believe they're losing limbs, and you don't think that's a problem. It's all in their heads, he replied. We're about to release a breakthrough drug here. If these are the side effects, we can't release it. This goes against everything we're supposed to be doing. But then, everything stopped. The building went silent, and I sat there in shock, tears streaming down my face. That's when my call button went off again. This time, the call was coming from the outside buzzer. I figured the hazmat team had arrived. I answered the call and waited for someone to speak. Hello? I asked. There was nothing but the sound of heavy breathing. Hello? I repeated. I've arrived, came the response. The words themselves didn't send chills down my spine, but the voice definitely did. It wasn't the police chief or anyone I recognized. My heart sank as I responded, voice shaky, "Who is this? I am going to enter." At that moment, I ended the call and stood up weakly. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I thought about what the voice had said, but before I could process it, the outside door creaked open. I turned to see something that was no longer human. It wasn't a man in a hazmat suit, nor a police officer, doctor, or anyone I'd ever seen before. Crawling toward me was something so monstrous that I would have rather been blind than witness it. It moved on 4 limbs that were covered in rotting, gangrenous skin, trembling with every step. Its head dragged behind it as though its neck had been snapped and left to heal that way. Its eyes were mismatched, one calm and blue, the other wild and brown. The creature was a twisted collection of body parts, stitched together like someone trying to assemble a human from scraps. It made a low, growling noise that sounded almost human. I couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. I stumbled backward, my mind reeling, but I had nowhere to go. The building was locked down. There was no escape. But before it could reach me, the creature stopped and spoke in the same voice I'd heard through the intercom. You are afraid, yes, fear not. I am not here for you. I pressed my back against the desk, trying to keep my eyes on it as it moved closer. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came out. The creature raised a finger, its red-tipped nail pointing directly at me. "We will meet again." "Yes. I know it. For you, there are still many things to see." I closed my eyes, tears blurring my vision. I could feel the lights flicker out, and the hum of the building stopped completely. When I opened my eyes again, the nightmare was almost over. They found me unconscious on the office floor. But what haunted me weren't my injuries, it was the sight in each of the patients' rooms. Every single one of them had died. One man had no legs. Another had no eyes or tongue. Miss Margaret was missing her fingers. Now, I'm locked up in a cell, and they're saying it was me. They're claiming I killed them all, that there was no monster. The worst part? The company is testifying against me, claiming I lost my mind under pressure and snapped. They say it couldn't have been the patients because none of them were in the placebo group, so they couldn't have hallucinated.